Hello, everyone. Your boy Jeff here, and we are back yet again in the spin zone. This time it really was sooner than later. but uh, did a little bit of a cheat because I'm still skating on the massive amount of records that I've been listening to during our COVID-19 isolation. So it didn't take very long to rack up another 10 albums, which is what I have to show you. Kind of a strange mix of things this time around, at least for me, and you'll see as we go along. Okay, I'm hoping the glare is not going to be super bad, but it's not too bad. Here is Chicago 3. That's what we're starting off with this time. This was Steve at Value Vinyl gave this one to me from his record giveaway from a while back. Yeah. This one is basically Chicago in full jam band mode. There's really no big chart hits, that's very recognizable off this album. And it's a double album, of course, because I think Chicago did nothing but release double and multi album sets until like Chicago 5 or 6 or something like that. But it's good stuff. But I think this would probably be more for hardcore fans of the band, especially of their early stuff, which I pretty much am. I'm glad to have this. Would it be one that I would reach for to spin more often? Probably not. But the copy itself played really nicely, so thank you, Steve. And it's a good sounding record. It's just... double album of it is probably a little too much for one sitting for me. But it's Chicago, so, how bad can it be? Love Chicago, at least the early stuff. And yes, I'm in my basement. This is my Pink Floyd wall. I've got sorry for all the glare. Maybe if I can close the shade, maybe that would cut it a little bit. No, not really. Okay. But solo David Gilmour tour poster I got when I saw him in 2016. Division Bell. Got the wall. And over here is the tour poster from Roger Waters, his 2017 tour, Us and Them. That's what I got set up in my basement. So it's a little different angle, a little different things to look at instead of my mug all the time. So enjoy. This next one I've seen pop up a lot in the VC. And my good friend Emma has shown this a couple times, which actually inspired me to want to play it again. I bought this. This is part of my original collection. And it's 461 Ocean Boulevard by Eric Clapton. My copy is a repress, obviously, and it's not a gatefold either. And... but it still sounds great. The album itself is wonderful. Like the story goes, this was Clapton's comeback album after being off the scene for a couple of years with his heroin addiction. And what a comeback record this was. He had a #1 hit with covering I Shot the Sheriff by Bob Marley, which is not Emma's favorite song off this album, which I understand. I get it. I love it too. Or I mean, it would probably be one of my favorites, not my very favorite of the album. I agree with her. My very favorite cut off this is a song called Let It Grow. Just a beautiful song. I love the guitar work on it. It's so chill and laid back. Wonderful song. But the entire album as a whole is really good. There's a lot of great guitar work on here. It doesn't quite fall into that groove mode that Clapton would fall into. It would take like another record or two before he was firmly established in that. There's still good solos in here. There's still good, strong guitar work. So that makes this album a lot better to listen to, in my opinion. And it's one of his best, if you ask me. So 461 Ocean Boulevard by Eric Clapton is always worth a spin in my book. Then, some of these are the results of random pulls from my crate, like this one. James Booker, the Lost Paramount tapes. As you can see, I bought this from Vinyl Me Please. I think I swapped this the last month of my membership there before I let it expire. I swapped this one instead of the record of the month because, of course, I'd heard great things about it. And the music on this is fantastic. Just fantastic. Can't really say enough good things about it. It's not quite blues. It's not quite rock. It's not quite R&B, but it's some of all of that. And he plays a tack piano in this on this record, which is, it uses a tack instead of a hammer to hit the piano string. So it gives it that ragtime, honky-tonk sounding piano sound, which you think would be kind of hokey, but he really makes it work. And this guy really knew how to play piano. And there's a whole story behind this record. You know, if you like I said, bluesy R&B-ish, kind of funk-ish type of, he reminds me of like Dr. John's type of music when I think of this. Really good stuff. Highly recommended. If you can find this, you know, on Vinyl Me Please or elsewhere, highly recommend you track it down. James Booker, The Lost Paramount Tapes. I'd been meaning to play this one, you know, sooner, but, you know, things go. You get massive amounts of records at times, and other things you've had before kind of get lost in the shuffle. So the random pull saved this from living in the crate any longer. But it's no fault of this album because it's really wonderful, like I said. And it came with a whole booklet telling the whole story about James Booker and this record and how it got rediscovered and all that. So, wonderful stuff. I really can't recommend this one high enough. Then we go to Stephen Stills. This is his album that is just called Stills. Came out in 1975. Again, no discernible hits from it that I recognized. But I'm a fan of Stephen Stills, you know, along with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, that whole group, you know, whether they're together or solo. And this happened to be in the free stack of records that I got, so I kept it. And it was a nice, laid-back, you know, chill type of record. Like I said, no big hits off of it, but it had its own vibe, it had its own groove. And I like Stephen Stills' voice. You know, it's more, it's not as smooth as, you know, Crosby's or Nash's, but it's got soul of its own. And Stephen Stills is a monster guitar player. So this was a great record. Stephen Stills' album called simply Stills. Then another random pull out of the crate was the Silvertones. This was contest winnings from Dead Wax 66 way back when. I think it was over a year ago now. And yeah, I got a bunch of albums from his contest. Was bands from the state that you live in. And he lives in Michigan, so the winnings that he sent consisted of albums from bands or record labels that come from the state of Michigan. One Chance with You is the name of this album. Wow, you can see my reflection. Okay. Ooh, that's no good. How am I going to hold this thing? Okay, maybe like that. This was okay. It's kind of, I mean, the Silvertones, from what I couldn't really find much info on them. I think this was the only album they ever released. I liked it. You know, it's just your kind of basic bar band rock and roll. You know, nothing wrong with it. Nothing too mind-blowing, but I honestly can't remember a single thing I heard off of this album, and I just played it like a week ago. Sorry, I'm not being mean, I'm not trying to be mean, but it was perfectly fine. You know, it was for the time it was on and playing, it was perfectly fine. So that's about the highest praise I can give it. Sorry. It'll stay in my collection, of course, because it gives me the memory of winning that contest. But, you know, it's just basic rock and roll. That's all it is. Something that's not basic rock and roll is Nitzer Ebb. And this is one of my wife's favorite bands, going back to her club days in the 80s. And I actually found this at a record store last year when I took a trip to Oak Park. I went to Valhalla Records, which at the time was going to close, but I think it ended up staying open. And I bought a stack of records there, and this was one of them because I knew she liked Nitzer Ebb. And when I saw it, I just said, oh, I'll get this for my wife. And we played it. And it's like not quite industrial like Ministry, but very close. It's kind of like a hybrid of like house music and industrial. You know, it's very hard driving electronic music with very loud shouted singing. And this is on clear vinyl too, so bonus. But one album it's a 2-disc set. The first record is the actual album, and the second album, or the second record, is remixes of all the songs. So she loved it. I liked it, you know, and of course playing this at top volume made my head just vibrate after a while, but it was worth it. So Belief by Nitzer Ebb from 1988. This is a reissue that came out, I think, like 2 years ago now, like 2018. So I dug it. Another contest winning record from Dead Wax 66 is another random pull. Frank Allison and the Odd Socks. Yeah. Just like with the Silvertones, this was a perfectly fine record. It's a little thin sounding. The songs are okay, but just like with the Silvertones, it wasn't particularly memorable, but it wasn't bad. So I played it, you know, we pulled it, I played it. It is what it is. You can yell at me in the comments if you want to. That's okay. If you're a big fan of Frank Allison and the Odd Socks. It was perfectly fine. I don't really have anything more to say. What can I tell you? What I do have to say, though, about this next one is from one of my all-time favorite guitarists ever. Blues guitarists. Of course, I'm talking about Albert King. This is his album called King Albert. And this came out, I think this is the record that came out after the last one I showed that I really liked. But I have to pull this off out of the sleeve to show you the inner sleeve, because this record is on the Tomato record label. And the inner sleeve they give you, or that the record came in, you can just show you this here. You can see it's like a paper bag, like a paper grocery bag. And you guys know how rough and scratchy this paper material can be. And that's what the record inside was rubbing up against. So luckily the record was in pretty good shape. I don't think it got played all that often, to be honest, because if you pulled it in and out of that sleeve too many times, you would end up scuffing it or scratching it or doing whatever kind of damage to it. But be that as it may. This was more of a laid-back album for Albert King. There's not a lot of hot and heavy guitar solos like there was on the last album of his that I showed. I'll show you the back here again. It was good. I liked it. It just seemed a little less heavy on the guitar heroics and more on the groove and the singing. But it's still enjoyable. It's still Albert King. You know, I still liked it. But if I had to rank this album, I would probably rank this one lower than some of his others. So still good. Think I found this at a half price for a couple bucks. So very glad to add it to the collection, of course, because it's Albert King. But there's not a lot of really hard guitar on this record, which I wish there was more of. So there you go. Okay, we're coming up on the end here. Jim Croce's I Got a Name is up next. Was in a mellow mood a couple days ago. Here's the back. And I was digging through the crate. Came across this. And it went down just fine. Of course, the title track was a big hit for him. I Got a Name. What else is on here? Working at the Car Wash Blues. That was another radio hit for him. I'll Have to Say I Love You in a Song. That was another good one. Top Hat Bar and Grill. Great record. Great acoustic singer-songwriter type of record from Jim Croce. I'm a fan of his anyway. And the only other album of his I have is his greatest hits, which some of the ones that are on this are not on the greatest hits that I really liked. So very happy to have this record. It played beautifully on the ABC label. Jim Croce's I Got a Name. Love it. And last but not least, because yesterday was May the 4th, Star Wars Day, of course, I had to play something Star Wars related. And in this case, it's the soundtrack to my all-time favorite Star Wars movie, The Empire Strikes Back. Double album set. Of course, any Star Wars fan, hardcore Star Wars fan, is probably nodding their head because I think this is universally regarded as the best Star Wars movie out of all of them. And as an OG fan, I can say that is definitely the case after seeing all of the 9 so far. Yeah, there's so much history with me with this film. You know, I remember seeing it when it came out in 1980. You know, me and my friend George would just go, I don't know how many times we went to see it. You know, I collected the cards. I got the toys. I saved my money to buy the action figures and the ships and anything you can think of related to this. As far as merchandising, I think I probably had at one time or another. So I usually end up watching this film probably maybe like once a year now. Never fails to deliver. Still a great story, still great action. You know, this is just the perfect Star Wars movie, and listening to the soundtrack, which I never really listened to the soundtrack before all the way through. So even just playing this reminded me of scenes out of the movie because it's so ingrained in my head that it just took me there immediately. This is a kind of a noisy copy. I think if I really wanted to get, have this to listen to repeatedly, I would probably go for a cleaner copy. But for what it is, it still played okay. And the music was wonderful. John Williams conducting his orchestra. You've got the main Star Wars theme on here. And I'll just show you the back again. This is actually the movie poster. Great stuff. For Star Wars Day, I had to play the soundtrack to Empire. And there you go. 10 more albums down. I'm hoping to do some 78 Cavalcade videos. I know I told my buddies on my Facebook group I was going to do it this past weekend, and I never got around to it. But I have a couple of 78s I think that would be enjoyable for you all. So kind of keep an eye if you're interested in that sort of thing. Might be coming your way soon. We'll see. I hope. And thank you for everyone for watching. Trying to get a little more active in the VC, like I said. So I appreciate your comments. Each and every one. Love you all. And I will see you again hopefully soon. So till then, it's your boy Jeff. Peace. And I will see you soon.